Spider-Man: Far From Home, coming less than 3 months after Avengers Endgame.
Yep. 2 months
Ha-
in a week.
Give me a temperature check on where you were at in terms of needing another Marvel movie in your life at this point.
Yeah, man. That's the thing. Like, I was not excited for this at all. And that was despite the fact that I really enjoy Tom Holland as Peter Parker, as Spider-Man. He's clearly the best of the
Mhm.
Spider-Mans we've had. And they've done a lot of, I think, good things with building up him and Infinity War and Endgame and his relationship with Tony Stark, which obviously comes back in this movie quite a lot. So I thought they've done a great job with him ever since they introduced him in Civil War. But just having another Marvel film so soon after Endgame that just can't feel nearly as important or essential as Endgame rightfully did.
Mhm.
It just felt a little unnecessary. I guess kind of like Ant-Man 2 last year after Infinity War. Just because the stakes are much lower in Far From Home, and that is, I think, a good thing for the movie itself. But because this movie can't escape the universe it's a part of, it just felt inessential to me, and that was kind of my
Mhm.
fear going in. I still enjoyed it, but yeah, I was not like super jazzed about this one. What about you going in?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I think everybody's seen that that they released Avengers Endgame, trying to get that final push to get it past Avatar, um, and it hasn't gotten there. And I think a lot of people are feeling a little bit of superhero fatigue, especially because Endgame was such a climax to this 10-15 year buildup, and it's
10.
it's a little weird to be like sitting down to watch Spider-Man, Peter Parker go on a class trip, and there's no other superheroes in this, especially because spoiler alert, we find out Mysterio is actually not a good guy. Which, if
Yeah,
you know anything about Spider-Man, it's
exactly.
pretty well known. Not a
Yeah.
good guy. Um, yeah, I found this film to be quite enjoyable in the second half. I found the first half of it, I was kind of sitting there like, I don't know if
A
I needed this. Don't
little
know if I
slow.
needed this. Yeah. Um, it it really picks up for me, I think, right after the twist. Which, again, not much of a twist, but the way that the movie shot, you feel like Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio
Hmm.
is going to be the next Avenger, the next Tony Stark, so to speak. Um, and turns out he's not. But then that's when things get good, because the movie becomes kind of like super weird after that. There's that scene where uh, Mysterio finds out that Peter figured out what's going on, and then he just starts doing all the like different holograms and imagery, and it's kind of like like a bad acid trip in a way.
Yes.
And I feel like that's when the movie starts to really hit his stride. Um,
Very
and
Scarecrow esque. Shout out Batman
yeah,
Begins.
great call. Um, you said you agree with me that the first part of the movie was a little bit slow. Tell me more about that. Like, what did you feel like you didn't like or didn't work for you?
Yeah, well, I think the movie, like, as like a teen comedy movie about teenage characters and like going through the ups and downs of having a romantic life at that age. I think that's actually done well, and it's nice that the Peter Parker story we're getting now is framed that way. But it just kind of felt like we were just kind of going through the motions. And I think a big part of this is, like, I really like Zendaya, and she's great on Euphoria, but her MJ stick through the beginning of Far From Home as well as Homecoming is just intentionally like more grating. She's like not
Mhm.
like a personable character at that time until she kind of changes a little bit when she figures out that Peter is Spider-Man later on in the film. And I just kind of been finding her a tough hang. Like I
Mm.
don't know, the momentum of conversation just kind of has been dying with her. And I'm sure plenty of people don't mind that and liked how it's been going. But that was always an issue for me. But it's like I like Peter, I like Nick. You know, they're good, they're fun, they have great chemistry. They feel like genuine friends. But it just felt very by the numbers. Let's just get going on this trip and up here's some threats and here's Mysterio. Just nothing felt essential or special about any of the setup. So it was just kind of dragging.
Yeah, I think the only two pieces that felt essential and important were um, all the imagery of Tony Stark that kind of hung over everything.
Yes.
That felt pretty essential in terms of explaining the second thing that was important, which was the Peter tingle, which I thought was a pretty funny running gag throughout. Um, but I do think that spoke to the deeper impact that the consequences of Endgame are having on the world at large, but Peter in particular, who's obviously just totally not himself. And to be dealing with a world that's on two very different levels. The very small story of this high school kid in Queens who just wants to tell the girl he likes that he likes her, and then there's obviously the larger stakes of the blip. And I actually thought that
Yep.
was explained really
Sure.
smartly. And done really well with what's named Brendan Davis.
Mhm.
I thought that was a pretty funny um, thing. How he was, 5 years ago, he was just this little dweeb, and now he's like this,
Mhm.
big buff teenager that all the girls think is hot.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. Um, so I think there are some parts of the setup that were effective, but in terms of like Mysterio and everything with that, I didn't really find that super engaging. It's just these big like earth, elemental type monsters that are coming out of nowhere, and he's shooting this green stuff from his hands at them, and it was just kind of like I don't know. It's something about that didn't totally work in terms of grabbing me.
Yeah, I just would like to like ask some kids that like don't know Mysterio and be like, "Did you ever think he was good? Did you just know he'd be a bad guy right away just because you've watched enough movies, you figure that out?" Like I'd love to just pull some of the younger audience for this movie and be like was this tracking for you guys? Did you guys like this? Because we liked Gyllenhaal in the role. Thought he did great,
Hmm.
but knowing he's a illusionist, a trickster of sorts, like it's really hard to believe anything you're seeing. So I feel like the twist that does come must really land much better if you have no idea it's coming. And I guess that's
Yeah.
just that's an unfortunate aspect of this knowing the source material in this case. This doesn't come up that often, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. I like the how this kind of served as a end game afterward. You get a lot
Hmm.
of scenes obviously with Peter, but also even Happy's role in the story and continuing this Tony Stark lineage. I didn't expect that, um, but the way they set up Homecoming, Civil War, Homecoming, and the last two Avengers movies, Peter has been very integral and connected to Tony. So I guess it makes sense that they would try and put a bow on that. I don't know about you, but it felt as soon as he gives the uh, Edith glasses, Enos, whatever it was, uh, to Quentin Beck.
Edith.
Yeah, it's like, oh well, this is clearly a bad idea. Like that was pretty contrived, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it takes a while to get going. I definitely like the end much more.
Hmm. Yeah. The Edith glasses I thought were um, in one part very funny because one, the name, even dead, I'm the hero, very felt very Tony Stark in a lot of ways, and I liked that. But also I felt was just like, oh, this is obviously this, I don't know, almost like a MacGuffin in a way. It kind of like
Mhm.
helps push the plot along, and it doesn't really have much more than, it's gonna serve this purpose of obviously Mysterio's gonna get a hold of this at some point, and what's he gonna do with it? Um, I thought I liked a lot of the like traveling stuff and like seeing Venice and Prague and London. But I also kind of found myself wishing he could just be Spider-Man for a while. And I
Yeah,
know that that was part of Peter's conflict, but kind of like the Night Monkey stuff and things like that. I was just kind of like, man, just like, everybody knows that Spider-Man has gone and fought with the Avengers at this point. Couldn't you just say like, oh, he must just be the only Avenger available right now? And like, Do you really think people are going to figure that out? I don't know. It felt
Yeah,
like a bit of a weird question or reason to not be Spider-Man.
I was gotta say the planning of their trip didn't make much sense to me. You're in Venice like a day, like that was before there was shit was getting changed. Like they're in Venice one day, you fly to Venice and you leave the next
Mhm.
day. What? Less than a
Yeah,
full day in one foreign city? That doesn't make any sense. Um,
yeah, no, I agree. Although I do have to say, JB Smoove I thought was
sure.
hilarious in this movie, and Martin
Bargamy,
Starr, yeah, got to play a bit more of like a goofier role for him, which is nice.
witches.
Um, uh, so I think we both liked the second half of the movie more. How did you feel about the interaction between Peter and Quentin Beck when Peter gives him the Edith glasses, and then the reveal that Mysterio is actually a bad guy?
Yeah, right. Well, kind of similar to Vulture in Homecoming. Quinn, once you understand, he actually kind of comes across as a more grounded villain with a discernible motivation. And I kind of like the connection that him and his cronies were all ex Stark employees that felt
Mm-hmm.
um, discredited or shafted by Tony in some way, which is
Yeah.
totally believable given everything we know about Tony's personality and behavior and whatnot. So I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was, again, just a smart construction. The same way Vulture was just someone who uh, his financial well being was impacted by the invasion in Avengers One. It's just kind of, I think it's a strong underlying will to just continue to enrich the world and just flesh out things that make plenty of sense when you actually think about them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once that plan came into focus, and you actually saw them testing the hologram illusion tech or whatever, and seeing
Mm-hmm.
that in action, you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And once he had the glasses as well, he did actually feel like quite a strong threat. So it was just,
Yeah.
I think it was more fun once we kind of just focused on the real meat of the conflict. Especially by that point, we also have MJ getting in on the plan,
Mm-hmm.
and just felt like everyone kind of progressed a little bit as a character by this point. So, and even having like the detour to the Netherlands, I thought was pretty amusing. And
Yeah.
then of course, you get the building the suit ACDC
Mm-hmm.
bit, which is kind of a classic thing in Iron Man movies. So I think
Yeah.
honestly, your people's temperature with this will ultimately be like, are you okay with it being less traditional Spider-Man than perhaps someone would want? As you said, he's not really being Spider-Man in a certain sense. He's literally not even in Queens the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
So is that okay? Yeah, I think that they do a good job. And at this point, I think like getting international kind of makes more sense. I kind of like that the scope is at least a little bigger than just the city, because it just feels like we're past that with Spider-Man, considering he's been in space and died and
Mm-hmm.
come back and all that. So, and then obviously the post-credit scene, I think, kind of ups the ante on that as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Certainly.
it's once we know Mysterio's true colors officially, I think it just picks up a lot more, and obviously the visuals get a lot better with all the illusion stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. The illusions and just seeing the height of Beck's powers really did make him feel really formidable. And I also felt like the final battle scenes, and also that scene I mentioned before where Mysterio is kind of fucking with Peter and they gets hit by the train. Um, I thought was
Yep.
really cool to watch, and just like the visuals of it were very interesting. And I know people usually critique these movies for devolving into a bunch of people punching each other and just fighting, but I really felt like this was a really, really well done final battle scene, especially when Peter has to use a spider tingle at the end and go through that hallway to get to Mysterio. I just thought that was like one of the best fight scenes they've probably done.
Yeah.
Um, really, really cool. Um, it kind of ends. He goes back to New York City and back to Queens. He's open with MJ, and they're in a relationship. But he's open with her about being Spider-Man at this point. He's swinging her around. Movie ends. Very happy. Then we get to the mid-credit scene. And it's there's a video leak to the J. Jonah Jameson uh,
Mhm. Daily Bugle.
dailybugle.net Alex Jones type spinoff.
Yep.
And there's a video of Mysterio saying Peter Parker like did all this, basically putting the blame for all people that died in these things on Spider-Man, and then revealing that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. How did you feel about that mid-credit scene and kind of how it sets up the next Spider-Man movie?
Yeah, I like how it ups the ante, getting his identity out there, at least
Mm-hmm.
attempting to paint him as a villain in the public eye. I mean, no one believes that'll actually last, but good idea. Cool
Mm-hmm.
path to go down. And of course, it's great to see J.K. Simmons back. Everyone loved him as Jameson in the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy last
Mm-hmm.
decade. And even though he's been Gordon in the DCU more recently, have him come back for this. Why not? It's pretty cool. Wouldn't be shocked if that was the last we see of him and he's not actually in the next Spider-Man film, but still really cool nod, while also actually a bit of an effective post-credits scene that actually teases the next Spider-Man movie and doesn't just tease or try and connect to something else in the larger MCU. So I like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah, I think it really sets up the next movie and the stakes of it really well. Love J.K. Simmons. He's always fun to watch, especially when he gets to ham it up as J. Jonah Jameson. Um, yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting because I feel like this happens almost with every single superhero in a sense, but I feel like this happened in a lot of the other Spider-Man movies where people are like, oh, is he a good guy or a bad guy? But this actually very clearly paints him as a bad guy, at least in the public eye. So that will be an interesting through line. Um, we also get another post-credit scene where it turns out that Nick Fury and I always forget her name.
Agent Hill,
Yeah,
Kobe
Agent
Smulders,
Hill um, were actually the green guys and not the blue guys, the Kree,
the
um,
Scrolls. You got
the
it.
scrolls. Fuck, the scrolls from
The shapeshifters.
yeah, Captain Marvel. Ben Mendelsohn and I forget who plays the girl, and people were pretty excited about this reveal. It's revealed that they're calling Nick Fury, who's out in space somewhere, working with the scrolls to um, do some project that we
Mhm.
don't know of yet. How did you feel about that final post credit scene?
Yeah, it was really hyped up. Um, as having like large scale implications for the MCU. And it has to be that what they were talking about because the J. Jonah Jameson stuff's very small, just integral to Spider-Man. Like we can slow on that. But yeah, like we already know the Skrulls were good, well intentioned people from Captain Marvel. A twist that's
Mm-hmm.
very effective in Captain Marvel. The fact that they're still present in the story, Nick Fury's with them, like cool. Like that's fine. Like they're in space, they'll come back in the fold for Captain Marvel 2 or Guardians 3 or you know, the Eternals, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean that's cool, but this doesn't really tell you anything. So I didn't quite understand why everyone was so excited because it's not teasing Secret Wars. Yes, the Skrulls were being actual people we knew on Earth, but they're good guys. So we're
Mm-hmm.
not getting Secret Invasion. We're not getting that.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite understand why everyone was super excited. I mean, it's just another cool thing to think about for a thread we, at the earliest, might get picked up a year from now in Eternals at the end of next year. So it was
Yeah.
fine, but I don't get it. The hype.
Uh, I think what is exciting more than anything is it confirms the speculation everybody's had and that we all knew with the Eternals coming along is that this is going to be a story that's going to move intergalactically.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's, I mean, we talked about it in our MCU Phase 4 expectations, which you can go back and watch that on our YouTube channel. Um, it's the right move. I mean, they got to make the story a little bigger. They got to take it to other places outside of Earth. And knowing Nick Fury's working on that, there's no doubt that he's going to pull the team back together to do that. So that's exciting to have that confirmation. I didn't find it exciting beyond, much more exciting beyond the fact that it's always nice to see Ben Mendelsohn, especially in this role. You know, he gets to be a little funnier, a little more
Yeah.
charming rather than menacing. So that's nice, and I did find him funny in this
Mhm.
small scene. Overall, it seems like we liked Spider-Man, but maybe didn't love it. Is the sense that I'm getting from you over there.
Yeah, it doesn't feel as essential as other MCU entries, and it as a film doesn't stand out for unique traits or filmmaking ideas the way like Ragnarok or Black Panther do. So
Mhm.
it's ultimately not that special, but still another solid, fun entry, especially if you this is one of the characters you really hone in on. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's interesting. We always expected this to be a new trilogy, considering how warmly received Tom Holland is, and his original MCU contract, which again, remember, it's loaned from Sony. Sony still controls the film rights. They're just working with Marvel Studios for this. Was 6 films, so that means he has one movie left. We assume that would be Spider-Man 3 with no uh, team up movie on the horizon. We don't actually have a date for that. We don't actually have the movie confirmed. They just did a quick 2-year turnaround for Far From Home, so maybe we get this in 2021. They have uh, dates in February, May, and November of that year right now.
Mhm.
Um, DC's The Batman comes out in June, so maybe May is. I think May's probably still enough time, so maybe that's the window. May 2021. We'll see. I wouldn't be opposed to them. Just again, take your time,
Mhm.
let it come out when it's ready. You don't have to rush this. You got plenty of other stuff, and I think everyone's kind of expecting the villains to be some kind of Sinister Six introduction with Vulture and Scorpion still
Mhm.
around from Homecoming. So, and also they teased Donald Glover in Homecoming. He could become Prowler, who we obviously saw in Spider Verse. So
Mhm.
we'll see about the future. Obviously, we're going to get Tom Holland again. He's 23 and a big hit in the role, so he'll be back.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more Spider-Man. They really have set him up to be the leader of these Avengers. So I'd be very surprised if this next movie is his last one.
Yeah,
Moving forward, I wanted to do a quick Jake Gyllenhaal appreciation conversation.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
he was. I found him fantastic as Quentin Beck. Slash Mysterio for this film. He's really been seeming to have a moment recently. Yeah, me and you have been talking a lot about this video where he was on this radio station and standing Sean Paul pretty hard, which we found
Got you.
hilarious. Yeah. He's just it's really interesting to think about where he comes from. He starts off really breaks through with Donnie Darko,
Yep.
then does the same year does Bubble Boy, and you're kind of like, all right, Bubble Boy, got some attention, pretty funny. Not a movie that's probably held up very well, I'd imagine.
You don't say.
Um, but then he has the Prince of Persia. He does Jarhead, Zodiac, Brokeback Mountain. In that time, I think he wins an Academy Award at least for the film, winning Best Picture.
Yep.
He's had a pretty up and down career, but more recently seems to be appreciated. Where are you at with your Gyllenhaal vibes?
Right. Well, this is the first blockbuster he's been a part of since Prince of Persia, which was 2010. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
while. Obviously, that movie was not well received, did not make a lot of money, and he kind of took that on the chin.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went from there and he made a lot of, more artsy movies, Source Code,
Like,
Duncan Jones, End of Watch, David Ayer, a bunch of Denny Villeneuve roles,
mm-hmm. Like,
Nightcrawler with Dan
yes.
Gilroy, you know, just kind of picking his spots. He's in Okja. He's in Wildlife last year,
Mm-hmm.
movie we talked about. Sisters Brothers. He's just kind of been picking and kind of doing the Pattinson playbook before Rob started doing it. Just pick great directors, pick interesting, weird roles that
Mm-hmm.
kind of are in the face of your natural star power. And meanwhile, throughout this whole time, he's been thrown around in all kinds of blockbuster casting, specifically superheroes. Like I know he was thrown around for Batman multiple
Mm-hmm.
times, and obviously they finally scooped him up for Mysterio. But it's actually a role that he's allowed to use his personality, use his acting chops. It's not like a suit villain the way like Corey Stoll had to do in Ant-Man 1, where even though he's a likable performer, he's not
Mm-hmm.
really given anything to do besides just kind of be obviously menacing, obviously bad.
Right.
And I think the the twist, as it were, even though it wasn't surprising to most of us, still kind of lends itself to a fair amount of range from Gyllenhaal in this role. So yeah, it's I think it was a really smart way to get back into the super mainstream this way. And looking at his upcoming projects, there's really nothing else of this scale, but it definitely feels like he made a full comeback after kind of having some ups and downs uh, in the mainstream consciousness. So pretty exciting in that regard.
Yeah, I just want to say you overlooked Velvet Buzzsaw when you were talking about these
Did I?
artsy films he's been in. At least I didn't hear you mention it, but maybe I missed it.
No, I mean,
Uh,
did I overlook it? Was
oh, yeah. Check out a review on that. But yeah, shout out to
Morph.
Gyllenhaal. It's interesting that he started off his career with such acclaim, and then had this big flop in Prince of Persia, and then has just kind of like just gone smaller and smaller until this. Wildlife. We really liked his performance. Uh, he's he thrives when he's weird, and it's what I find most fascinating about that is that he has everything you need to be a traditional movie star. He's got acting chops. He's incredibly handsome, very charming in most of the films that he's in.
Mhm.
But I think where he thrives is just in these roles where he gets to be a huge weirdo, because I think that's just who he who he is. If you watch pretty much any like media he does, I feel like there's always something weird that comes out of it. So um, I really appreciate Gyllenhaal, especially in this part of the of his career. He's making some really smart choices, and um, I think it's also good that he kind of did a one-off thing where he's not
Yep.
going to be an ongoing villain. Just kind of comes in, does his thing, gets back out. So shout out to Gyllenhaal. Anything else you want to talk about with Spider-Man before we wrap up?
Nah, man. I'm very, very much looking forward to this 10-month break now before Black Widow, which is still not officially announced, but is being filmed as we speak. So it'll be a nice little layoff, and I'm sure people will have some excitement, especially when end of next year comes around and we get something truly new in Eternals.
What's the next DC? The Joker?
Yeah, Joker, end of the year, which is not actually in the DCU, but still cool. And then beginning of next year, we have Birds of Prey, and then Wonder Woman 1984.
Enjoy the superhero time off, people. You can't complain about superhero fatigue after a layoff like this. So
Yeah.